Good morning, Money. How are you? I hope everyone is well. How am I doing? I'm doing just fine. Thanks. So, welcome back to Poetry Unit. We're still looking at metaphors and similes. This is kind of part three of metaphor and simile. Last week, or rather on Monday, Good morning, Amani. Welcome back to Similes and Metaphors, the focus on similes and metaphors in poetry. Today we're going to take a deep dive into a Maya Angelou poem, a complex poem in many ways when we're talking about metaphors. We focused a little bit on simile earlier in the week with the Wes McGee poem about the sun, and also with the Walter Dean Meyer poem. So those had similes as opposed to metaphors for the main focus. So I just want to review a couple of things. First of all, simile, and metaphor both are figurative language, and they both okay, are exercises in comparisons. The simile using like or as to make a comparison between two things, and metaphors essentially saying something is replacing something else. It's putting in a different picture in your mind of something. Both figurative language, both kind of in the comparison family, but they do it in two very different ways. Initially, I had spoken about how I used to view similes as being the simpler form of figurative language, and I'm sticking with that. But I was convinced a little bit that it takes some amount of creativity, even if you're using the like or as to make a comparison, because there's some kind of energy that goes between the two. You're picturing something, and then you're picturing something else. Whereas a metaphor is just saying, look, here is this thing, and I'm going to replace this image, or I'm going to replace this feeling for you in your own head. As a writer, I think I struggle more with metaphors, and we're going to take a look at that today with Maya Angelou's poem. So, a couple of things I want you just to keep in mind. So, with this poem, there's certainly a load of tone and mood that you're going to pick up from this particular poem, When Great Trees Fall. But I want to be real clear about the objective. So the objective here, actually, I will click on it. Let me just get it in front of you. So we have two objectives. It's Thursday, so we'll be writing. But the first objective, let's go over that. To recognize and explain the poet's use of metaphor in the poem When Great Trees Fall. How does the poet use metaphor? What is she doing with metaphor? The second objective, being that it's Thursday and it's a writing day, is we need to construct, craft, write a well written braces response that explains the text evidence you've chosen to support your answer, thinking, and idea. The reason why I put that answer, thinking, idea portion in the objective is because a lot of you are very adept at taking a piece of text and putting in your answer. It's the explanation that you don't really do justice to, like your thinking. You took this piece of text for a reason. I need you to explain it because I need you to explain what does it mean to you, or what do you think the writer is doing. So a little bit more focus on that. If you've done your work this week with similes and metaphors, you should have a grasp, at least on the similes and the metaphors today. I also just want to point out, and I'll point it out later as well, that this is a poem that's going to lead us into next week. And next week, we're going to be looking at personification. So as I read this poem, I also want you to maybe think about, is there any personification? Hopefully I'll remember to go back and we'll try to answer that question at the end of this lesson. It would be real helpful if you had the poem in front of you and were reading along with me. I don't know, split screens, do something. You've got skills. You've been on this, God, for weeks. So let's just go through the poem. Even the image right here should give you kind of a clue what this poem is about. We ready? Stop talking. We ready? Excellent. When Great Trees Fall by Maya Angelou. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder, lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly, our eyes briefly, see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory suddenly sharpened examines, gnaws, unkind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality bound to them takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nature, now shrink, wizened, our minds formed and informed by their radiance far away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses restored, never to be the same, whispered to us. They existed. They existed. We can be, and be better, for they existed. Woof! Tough, tough poem. So let's go back to what I was talking about, first of all, with tone and mood. So I want you to think to yourself, what was the tone and mood of that poem? And how would you know? Like, what would you pick out of the poem if you were to tell me the mood was, I don't know, think about that for a second. I'm going to pause this video. If you said this poem was mournful or sad or regretful, I would agree with you. And nice job. I think certainly when she talks about when great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile, and like we lose something even from everything that's around us. What kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. To me, that is regret. So, in speaking about metaphor, I want you to think about trees and people, and especially, the reverence that she uses in this poem. When we think of the people that stand tall for us, that support us, that shade us, that protect us, very much people, you can use a tree as a metaphor for a person. The way that, if we even think about family trees, I mean, we even use the term family trees, the branches of our family trees, and just how it spreads out and there's a history to us. And when we talk about being rooted and belonging to a place, so trees as a metaphor for people, not an uncommon thing, but not to the point where it's a cliche either. It's still, I think, a very strong metaphor and very meaningful. So let's get to the writing. So the braces response, something that you guys have worked on for a number of years now. I often think when you guys fall short, it has more to do with the explanation portion. I think you understand how to restate or how to get that background sentence in, but we're going to do it piece by piece. So the question, which I posted in Google Classroom, and everybody has a paper to write on, a paper to write on. Um, the question is, how does Angelo use the phrase great souls interchangeably with the phrase great trees? Use two details from the poem to support your response. So let's just take a look at how I started this out. This is a model braces for you. I give to you here. And here's the question. So here's my background opening sentence for this particular question. I wrote, When Great Trees Fall by Maya Angelou is a timeless poem, but a poem that almost seems to be written for these hard times. We think about it. If this poem is about death or regret or any of these things related to it, I'm just giving it to you straight up. What I mean by a timeless poem, I just mean because this is part of life. Okay. Um, so this is a poem that I think will endure for a long time. You can do something similar. What do you know about poetry? Remember that opening sentence. What do you know about metaphors or, just any explanation of the poem you can use for an opening sentence. You can also take it on a personal note. When Great Trees Fall by Maya Angelou made me cry because it's a sad poem about death. That's a fine opening too, and you can build on that later. And here's my response. It's certainly a poem about death and loss, and she uses the phrase great souls interchangeably with the phrase great trees as a giant metaphor related to the loss of somebody that has meant so much to us. Again, talking back that comparison to trees and people. Here comes my first piece of text and an explanation. The use of great souls and great trees is a metaphor to express the enormity, giantness, of loss and what it does to us. In stanza 3, when she writes, Our memory, suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws unkind words unsaid, she is expressing regret for the things left undone. Now, I come right out and say she's expressing regret for the things left undone. When I look back at this right now, I go to myself, I could write more about this. I should have written more about this. This is what I need you to do with your writing. I need you to look at what you've written and say, did I take the next step? So she's expressing regret for the things left undone. And maybe there's something personal that I can bring in, the promises that I made, that we all have kind of a personal well of things that we regret. So go ahead and share something. It just makes your writing stronger. Here comes my second piece. Similarly, or in addition, or secondly, in stanza 5, when great souls die after a period of peace blooms, the metaphor is referenced again and used interchangeably with the thought of or the image of great trees, in that it references a sort of forest of emotion, particularly with the word blooms. Again, looking at my writing, I could explain that she's talking about emotions, but she's using the word blooms, and we think of blooms as gardens and forests. These are things that grow. And actually, later on in that particular stanza, where I hit the dot, 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 slowly and always irregularly, she writes, spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Just like a forest, things don't grow in the same places after they die. The seeds go elsewhere. There's always more we can write. You just need to take the time and do so and think about it. And again, I did it again with just my last summary sentence. The interchangeable phrases great souls and great trees creates a powerful and moving metaphor poem. That does what? Again, I can add to this. The interchangeable phrase great souls and great trees creates a powerful and moving metaphor poem that seems written for these difficult and strange times. So, just your writing, I need you to challenge yourself with your writing. I need you to take it to that next level, that next step. It takes time, but time is what you have, and you know it. So work on it. This is an opportunity. It's what we make of it. So I'm proud of myself because I remembered I said we were going to go back to that personification. So I'm going to read the first stanza of the poem, and then I'm going to pause the video, and I want you to answer this question to yourself. She opens the poem with the stanza, "When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder, lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety." So, what is personification in that particular stanza? Pause the video here and then tell me. So, if you said that the lines "rocks on distant hills shudder," shudder is kind of like shake, then absolutely you were right. That's personification. Rocks don't shudder. If you see a rock shudder, well, it means it's an earthquake, so you should run. On a final note, I just want to encourage everybody to show up to my live office hours. I always post it in the morning, and it's more than just popping in to say hi. I need you to use that time to check in with me, let me know how you're doing as far as the work goes, as well as personally, because I do miss you. But use the time if you're struggling or if you have any questions. Please come to the live office hour and check in. I'd be more than happy to help. Also, feel free to email me directly. You know where to find me. Mr. A loves you. Have a good day. Work hard. Bye.